Welcome, everyone, and we are back to the Coach Mo Murphy Show, as hosted as always by your host, Coach Mo Murphy. And we got, obviously, it's not even a special guest at this point. Like I say, he's just like my weekly co-host when it's time to talk college football. We got Jeff Hunt in the building. Jeff, how are you feeling today, Sunday evening, as we are recording this podcast?
But physically, it was a long day yesterday, Mo. I went to the Ohio State game, with some friends. We enjoyed it as much as anybody thinks we did. Emotionally, I'm feeling great. The Buckeyes, we talked about it. The Buckeyes checked a lot of boxes yesterday, and college football again prove that it's the most interesting, form of football out there. I don't, outside of the NFL. So yes, I'm 50-50 at
Yeah,
best.
and that's why I say, at the same, you went to the game yesterday. Those could turn into long events, especially if you tailgate prior. I know
Yes.
you drove out that way as well. I mean, I know you don't stay far, but still, just to drive there and drive back all in the same day and, do all the daytime activities like
Yes.
go to the game and tailgate and celebrate the win after the game before you head home. I know that could turn into a long day, but Jeff, is always good when that long day is positive because you come away with your team winning. Not
Yes.
just your team winning, but in the grand scheme of things, they steamrolled Penn State. I know
Mhm.
this isn't a good Penn State team. We can talk about that all day. This game was like circled on the calendar prior to the season as like this was going to be the game that was either going to stamp Penn State or stamp Ohio State. Like Penn State was basically going to their goal was to play to be undefeated for this game, and that was Ohio State's goal. And number 2 versus number 3, or number 1 versus number 2, wherever they were going to sit at, somewhere in that top 3, they were going to determine that we are the big dogs for the season. Penn State season went one way. Obviously, Ohio State season is going the other way. Now, the one problem I have about this game before we really, really talk about this game is I don't like the takeaways of if you're not going to give Ohio State any credit. I really feel like then just be quiet. Like you're at this point, if you're going to beat up Ohio State you're not giving them any type of credit, then to me, like you're just putting it out there because, talking about Ohio State positive or negative is going to get you the views and the clicks and the engagement that you want. Because yes, did Ohio State beat the number 2 team in the country that was number 2 coming into the season? No, they did not. This is a team that has now fired their head coach. This is a team that lost their starting quarterback. But in the grand scheme of things, this game was going to be everything to prove for Penn State coming into the season, not Ohio State. Ryan Day has dominated this team specifically while being the head coach at Ohio State. James Franklin has not been able to win these games. Drew Allar has not beat Ohio State. That's what was on his resume. So this was a prove it to Penn State that you were worth all the hype coming into the season. Obviously, now sitting at 3-5 now after the loss to Ohio State, you look at them completely different. But like I told people, I said, it's not that I'm going to give Ohio State the ultimate credit if they handle business against Penn State, but to dominate against a team that people were telling you is still talented enough. And this could be their game that's circled on their calendar. Like, you know what? We might have had a crap season, but winning this game will mean everything. Essentially, it was Penn State Super Bowl on the road. And for the first half, they looked like they might, Ohio State might take a while to pull away and never really fully dominantly pull away, going to halftime 17-14. And then obviously it was a tale of two halves. Not that Ohio State played bad in the first half. It's just they didn't play how you're used to. Offense still scored 17 points. Julian Sand was getting the ball to Carnell Tate, getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith. So you had no problem on the offense. Get a little nervous because we gave up 14 points in the half. But you turn around in the second half and give up, 61 yards of total offense in the half? Like, that's how you respond to adversity. And so I want you to talk about that because that's been your biggest thing year in and year out with watching Ohio State. And every once in a while, they do have these years where a lot of teams on their schedule are supposed to be pretty decent and they don't end up panning out. Not Ohio State's fault, but before the season, Ohio State's schedule looks a lot tougher than 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks into the season when these teams actually have to play football and prove what their preseason ranking is. But this team was dominant, and you were waiting for them to get punched in their mouth. You were waiting for them to walk into halftime only up 17-14. Look like you might be in a dogfight in the second half. What are you going to do? How did you feel personally? And you were there in person with some good seats. You showed us the picture that you took. You had some really good seats, so you got to see it firsthand. How did you feel? How did the second half response make you feel as an Ohio State fan, as arguably one of the toughest critics that I ever speak to on Ohio State? Were you satisfied with the second half response of Ryan Day, the defense, the offense, and just Ohio State as a whole?
Yes. As we
In
were sitting,
thinking, you'll never hear that much. I just want y'all to know. Jeff said he was satisfied. You will not hear that much until we win a back-to-back national championship. So soak it in.
You are also correct to where I don't care about anything now until the playoffs. But I did say it was weird because the funny story about that is my wife went to get some food before halftime. You know, you want to get there, get your food, get back to your seats, right? And as Ohio State was getting ready, Penn State's getting ready to punt. Ohio State's going to, you know, we presume go into the locker room 17-7, blah, 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 the normal. And I was like, okay. And again, to that point, I was like, okay, I know we're good, but you know, whatever. Really nothing had been answered. She gets back and you can hear the crowd. So she misses the Donaldson fumble. She misses the Penn State touchdown. And she just assumes, man, Jeff's going to be he's going to be being dragged out of the stadium right now. It's 14-17 Ohio State. But it was quite the opposite. I looked at my friend and I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly what this team needed because what I liked about the adversity was that it wasn't caused, like it was a stupid fumble. They should have called it dead anyway, whatever. But it wasn't a dumb mistake or whatever. But it was like I've said on our show every week, Mo, it was sort of an artificial way to put Ohio State, you know, under the gun for a little bit that they hadn't been out, you know, past since the Texas game. And I looked at him and I said, what they do coming out of halftime is going to determine how I feel about this team moving forward. Like I could not wait. I was more eager for the third quarter kickoff than I was the Texas kickoff because I was like, okay, now like everybody can shut me up. This is the just shut up, Jeff, third quarter. And it was. They came out and immediately went right down the field, immediately used their weapons, you know, took the lead, and then obviously didn't give up a point in the second half. And, you know, even Julian saying, like I've been saying, like I just needed to see him get beat up a little bit and then respond. He did that. I mean, he's out there, he's running around, you know, he got tackled, you know, he got sacked a couple times, whatever. He responded and played what he actually played his best game of the season. Whatever the stats say, like he played his best game of the season, making decisions.
Well, the stats support that. Like, I mean,
yeah, and the stats support that. But I'm saying, like,
4 touchdowns.
It was probably better than that. So yes, for you know, again, I got to watch 2 games. I got to watch a close first half, possible giant upset, which really never felt like it was going to happen.
Right.
And maybe this is more of a Penn State story, honestly, because we sat just behind the Penn State bench. I mean, when I say just behind it, like right behind it, you want to talk about a team, one of the worst slides that I've ever seen a team take from basically coming into the season, guaranteed to go to the playoffs, guaranteed to have a shot at the national championship. All you got to do is beat Ohio State, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, they were penciled in Big Ten champs.
Penciled in to a team that has resided themselves to being like 5 in a row, five losses in a row in college football for a good team is impossible. That's really bad. And on the field, they played their hearts out, but like they never. Now, I want to say, I don't know if they showed up on TV or not. When I watched the replay that I've seen so far, you know, it's kind of the abridged version. So I don't know if they showed it, but like at the end of the first half, after Penn State scores, like I'm just saying, I was there. They were looking at us like they were literally flipping the bird to the fans, the Ohio State fans, and egging them on and all that. And that's fine. I do not care. I don't mind. But I'm saying, like, they definitely thought that like they were going to upset, which is sad for a team that just lost 4 games in a row, that like your whole season is going to be decided by whether you can upset somebody, you know, even though you don't really have a factor. But no, Ohio State responded great. They look the part. They were the part. That's all I needed to see. I know basically kind of penciling Ohio State into the playoffs because they need to win 2 out of the next 4 to get to the playoffs. And right. I think they'll do that. So it's another one of those teams like Notre Dame, you know, Ohio State, probably Texas A&M. Like these are teams that like, but I was impressed. I was impressed by, you know, I don't care what anybody says. The running game's not there. That's a problem. But as you talked me off the ledge a couple of weeks ago, may not need it. Like, I'm not saying we're going to need it.
And
Julian
I
Sain
said
is so good. The protection is so good. The receivers, Jeremiah Smith. I didn't. It hadn't sunk in until this game that all the experts and everybody's like, the best player in the country needs to be talked about and not include Jeremiah Smith because they might be right. I don't know what you do with this guy. I don't know how you defend him. I don't know how you stop it. So I'm sort of leaning more to Coach Mo Murphy now as to where, okay, the playoffs is not going to be rainy and snowy and all these things. And I think, I mean, yes, I don't think we're one dimensional, but we're barely two dimensional. They still haven't figured out, me and Jay have talked about it. You and Jay have talked about it. They haven't figured out the running game yet. But boy, you want to talk about being honestly, I'm never going to not be satisfied about beating Penn State. I don't care. I'm with you when you open the show. I don't care if you tell me how bad they were. I'm still going to enjoy beating Penn State. Like, it still counts. Right. 9 in a row versus Penn State. So yes, as far as a early November game can go and be pleased with it, that was it. And then to watch a great Game 7 of the World Series, by the way. One of the great baseball games I've ever watched.
Listen, what a day. I was watching baseball. All right. So that tells you, like, understanding the importance.
Why there was football on.
Like, exactly. I watched it. Like, believe it or not, I watched almost the entire Game 7 too. Yes. Like, I didn't miss the end at all. Like, from the 6th inning on, I was kind of flipping back and forth. 6th inning on, I was all in on watching the World Series, and they gave for a Game 7, and I didn't watch much of the series. So for everybody saying this is arguably one of the greatest World Series, and there were multiple games like that, just to see a Game 7, I'll go with what everybody's saying. Kind of the conversation on the timeline was arguably, while this wonderful college football Saturday was being played out, arguably the greatest Game 7 and one of, if not the greatest World Series that we've ever seen was being played. But Jeff, the thing that you said about, and I said this on Locked On Buckeye, quick little plug. Make sure you go check out Locked On Buckeyes on Monday. I will be a guest on there with Jay. And we talked about the running game. And I said, I'm not satisfied with the running game, but I'm not sure. And like I've been saying, it might not matter. And here's the thing, because let me jump into the fans that will say on the other side, oh, well, it's going to matter. What if it's 32 degrees, 45 to, wind chill, all that in Ann Arbor on that Saturday at the end of November? What if it is? But what if it's 45 degrees, sunny, no wind, and a perfect, just cold day in November to play a football game in Ann Arbor? Like, and then when you think about, so if we could get over that game, if the weather goes our way and it's not a snowy game and you're not concerned about losing to Michigan, and then come Big Ten championship game, the following Saturday after the Michigan game, we make it to the Big Ten championship. We're playing in a dome. We're playing at Lucas Oil Stadium. Then you go on from there. We're going to get a first round bye if we finish out right there. Now we get a first round bye, and we're playing at sites that are either indoors or beautiful warm weather in December and January. So the concern of getting the run game going, it really might not matter, because the one thing that I have not seen, I've seen some pretty good defenses. I've seen some teams that I think, in a grand scheme of things, there's a couple teams that might give Ohio State fits. And when I say fits, I don't mean that they could beat Ohio State, but they could put Ohio State on the brink of defeat. But even in those teams, they don't have two top tier corners that can go mano a mano, one-on-one with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. And the thing about it is, Max Clare, even though he hasn't been the all Big Ten type tight end that we expect him to be coming from Purdue, he makes plays when you need to. Yes. And if you open up for any one of the other playmakers, you're going to have to double Jeremiah Smith. You're almost at the point, realistically, like, Carnell Tate is killing you because you can't guard him one-on-one, but you can't put a safety over the top of two receivers when you have a great quarterback like Julian Sam. You got other weapons like Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter and Brandon Ennis and Max Clare and Bennett Christian at the tight end position. And you got a running back. You got a few running backs that if you give them the hole, they could get 10 to 12 yards. Yeah. Is the run game just can we ground and pound? Is it the same result that Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins gave us, or J.K. Dobbins or Ezekiel Elliott, all those guys? Of course not. But we're running back by committee. And at the same time, like, when we have to run the ball, we get some positive yards. Everything's not just we're getting pushed back. We're getting positive yards, and we're setting us up where, instead of 2nd and 7, you'd like to see a first down run, put us at 2nd and 2 or automatic first down, like you're accustomed to seeing with the elite running backs. we knew we were going to take a step back in the talent pool at the running back position, and we did. 2 freshmen might be the 2 best running backs on our roster, but I don't know if that's going to be a problem this year. And with that being said, like, if you don't have to, if you're like, we need to upgrade at the running back position, a transfer portal exists, and you will be able to do that in the near future. But I don't think I have to see the run game. Like, I don't necessarily think I want to see Ryan Day prove a point that we can run for 200 yards in a game against Purdue on Saturday at the risk of putting the leash back on Julian Sand and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell taking that offense and the explosiveness and getting the ball down the field. So Ryan Day doesn't have, I mean, he won the national championship last year. Realistically, he doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. He doesn't have to answer any questions. But I told Jay this before, I don't want to kill everybody with our Ohio State talk, but typically we always go over Ohio State and talk about every other team on Saturday.
Yeah.
Saying, here's what I want to watch out for over the next month. I think I'm kind of going to key in and pay attention to is each game we're going to unlock another level of Julian Sand, because Ryan Day did for not the first time since being the head coach, but he typically doesn't entertain this question. He entertained and started his campaign as a head coach for Julian Sand for Heisman. Now, when a coach typically does that and looks at the schedule and realizes at least the next 3 games should be blowouts, he lets his quarterback get his stats in. He lets his quarterback throw his touchdowns. He lets his quarterback, expose Purdue down the field. He lets his quarterback throw for 300+ yards for the next few games. So that's where I'm looking at Ryan Day. I'm like, maybe he might unleash another level of the offense a little bit earlier, because it's like he's just been letting them go game by game, a little more. And Julian Sand constantly delivers. But now he's delivered all the way up to the point. Not only is he in the Heisman conversation, he's the Heisman favorite, Jeff. So therefore, I could see Ryan Day really like this might be now over the next month where he's still going to do it game by game. He ain't just going full blown. Let me show you everything against Purdue. But I think the numbers that you saw from Saturday against Penn State from Julian Sand, I think that's going to be a common theme over the next month. I don't think we're going to I think he's going to throw more. I think by the Michigan game, if the weather calls for it, Julian Sand will throw in that game 30 to 35 times.
And we've seen this before, and I know I can't believe I'm saying it, and I'm not saying that yet they're on the same par, but we've seen this before. We saw 2019 LSU say, hey, our offense is based on how good our quarterback is and how good our receivers are. And like when we look back at that, as good as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I believe, was, it didn't matter. And so we have seen this work. So yeah, again, I'm starting to eat some of my words here, and I'm happy to do it. That like I'm with you. It may not matter. I definitely like
to Joe Burrow too. Like I think it's very
that's what I'm saying. Like this is like you can like he might just be like, no, we're that good. I do not care. Like I'm with you. Like, and I also the downfall of Ohio State last year. I know it's crazy to say the downfall of a national championship team, but it was that they did lock in and say, hey, we're going to prove that we're tougher and we can run and do all these things. This year, Day might just be like, nah, like the reason that
the best thing is we're not.
Yes, the reason
in the trenches, we don't have Henderson or Judkins, so now we're just going to lock in and play what's going to win us football games.
And it's the reason
quarterback and receivers.
This is the reason I get receivers here. This is the reason I get quarterbacks here. I would say that you touched on something. What Julian Sand does this year directly reflects Ryan Day as a coach. And so I think that Ryan Day finally, he getting through like what he's had Fields and he's had Stroud on the podium. Will Howard got, was sniffing it last year, but I think Ryan Day actually should take a lot of pride in if he can get a quarterback the trophy and all these things, and I want to give him full credit for what he's done, because we watch these other teams, they don't have guys doing what Sand's doing. And, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the level of competition. A lot of quarterbacks don't have the level of competition, and they're still not doing what he does. I've said it a million times on Jay's show. I'm not going to penalize Julian Sand for doing the best with great, receivers. Just like I don't penalize a chef for making great food with great ingredients. Like you give a great chef great ingredients and he makes you a great meal. You're not like, yeah, but great. No, Julian Sand is taking advantage of what's out there, and it's working both ways. And I'm finally like I'm on board with you now. Like it's just not going to happen. They're not gonna have 300 yards running and win a game and all. It's like that's the Urban Meyer days aren't coming back. But the other side of it is there is no answer for what they have on offense right now, and there's still so many levels just waiting. He got a touchdown to the tight end, which honestly, that touchdown to Christian was probably one of my favorite touchdowns of the year. Outside of the decision making, who he threw it to, how he threw it, where he threw it, like that. If Ohio State, let's put it this way, if Ohio State can unlock the one or two tight end, fronts, and make that work, and also with what we know they have on the outside, then I don't even care about the running game. Like I don't even care
that's
anymore.
What I'm saying. That's where Ohio State's offense might be. Yeah. So we'll get up off of Ohio State, Jeff, because we said a few things that could lead to us talking about another team. So I've said why I'm upset about Ohio State, and as far as the disrespect or whatever that they get or not getting, they're never going to get full credit until they end up.
They win it all. That's it. They can only win it all.
Exactly. But a team that if you get credit for one win, no matter if it was weeks ago or whatnot, Indiana is essentially doing the same thing that Ohio State is doing, but getting all the credit because they beat Oregon a month ago.
Yes.
So I'm not hating on Indiana. It was
beating an Oregon team that barely got by Penn State.
And you also haven't heard much from Oregon since then. Like they've been winning games, but they haven't been making a lot of noise in the national landscape. But like Indiana's been blowing out teams that they're supposed to blow out. They beat the good team that was on their schedule, so they proved that they could play. I guess you give them a little more credit for blowing out Illinois than Ohio State does because they did it first. So they get the credit of they exposed Illinois before we did, so it makes the Ohio State win not as good. Okay, but you're also going to build up another team that just won, and you're going to sit here on the network and you're going to build that team up and tell us how good they are and how much they turn around the season and that they could be a college football playoff team. And this team was talented enough before the season that you named them the number one team in the country, and maybe they figured things out, and that's Texas, which is fine. I'm okay with viewing Texas like that. If you also turn around and say, but man, this is the same Ohio State team that held them to 7 points. Yeah, they only scored 14. It was first game of the season. But you even saw now that how Julian Sand's being used. If they play Texas again today, Julian Sand doesn't throw the ball 17 times. Right. Julian Sand throws the ball 20 plus times, 30 plus times. They'll unleash the offense. They'll trust him enough. And maybe, hey, this Texas team, Arch Manning will play a lot better. Maybe he got his mojo back. That could be said as well. But I'm just saying, you're going to build up Texas. They're going to be ranked. They're going to be overly ranked. They're going to be the win against Vanderbilt is going to be overly valued because of what they did in the first three quarters. Everybody's going to forget that they just had a blunder of a fourth quarter and almost blew the game. But you're going to build them up because they beat Vanderbilt. But you won't turn around and say, well, at least Ohio State has beat Texas. Ohio State has beat this Illinois team, and they beat the crap out of everybody that they were handed in front of them. But you're giving Indiana the same credit, which to their credit, Indiana is handling business, but people are standing on like Ohio State shouldn't be the number one team, and then they're throwing Indiana out there because of their win against Oregon. That's the only real standout win they got. Ohio State has a standout win against the Texas team that just got a top 10 win. Yeah. So if we're going to reach back to the part of the season that doesn't matter at this point in order to justify where we think a team should be, I just hate how the conversation is so much different for Ohio State than literally probably every other team in the country.
Yeah, it's always going to be that way.
It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. I do understand it, but it doesn't mean that it's not one of the frustrating parts of being an Ohio State fan year in and year out. We have to have these arguments and these debates and these conversations with people year in and year out to prove how good we are.
Yeah, and Indiana has the luxury. Like, let me tell you something. Ohio State, I know they only scored, I think, 7 points in the fourth quarter Saturday. Let me tell you, they could have done whatever they wanted. After they got up, a couple touchdowns in the third quarter, they could have done whatever they wanted against Penn State and chose not to. They chose not to, whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent. As to where Indiana, like, for some reason, thinks that we're still in the BCS era and that the point differential is going to matter, and they definitely want to win the Heisman, which is all the stuff that Indiana's doing, in my opinion, is going to haunt them. They're getting caught up in the Heisman race. They're getting caught up in the we want to be number one. They're getting caught up in the point differential. Like all of these things are exactly what Oregon did a year ago. 1 year ago, we saw Oregon do everything that Indiana's doing right now, and that will catch up with you. But we'll see. Unfortunately, like I think Ohio State. The good news for Ohio State is if they drop one, they don't have to play that stupid Big Ten championship game because they don't have any of the tiebreakers, because that is going to be one of the most wasted games.
I hear you, Jeff,
in
but
history.
I said this to Jay, and I'm sorry. This is where I'm on the other side of the fence with you. I know in the grand scheme of things, when trying to win a national championship and the way the playoff is set, if you could go 11-1 and avoid the conference championship game, you might end up benefiting from it.
Yeah.
But that's cool when it hasn't been since 2020 that you've won your conference championship or even played in that game on that Saturday.
Fair.
I'm tired of our season ending after the Michigan game and we're waiting 3 to 4 weeks to see Ohio State play again, and we're turning around and watching that conference championship weekend and Ohio State's not playing. If they could get in this year, win the Big Ten championship, then from there on out, like just get back to doing it and make it your conference. Then from there on out, I'll probably lean with you. But since it's been since 2020, I'm on the side of like,
yes,
this year,
I agree.
Michigan game isn't pointless. This year, that Big Ten championship.
Oh, no. That's a whole different story.
No, and I know you didn't say the Michigan game, but I'm just saying like this year, we could go 11-0, lose to Michigan, and in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't matter. We went 10-2, lost to Michigan, won the national championship. So it could not matter. But to me, like everything, beating Michigan, winning the Big Ten championship, putting your name back on top as far as a conference championship winner. You just won a national championship without doing those things. Now turn around, let's try and run it back to back, but complete those things. Check off every green mark, every green check off every box on your way to trying to become a back-to-back national champion. And I think that's what Ryan Day is doing. So it's not like I think he doesn't care whether the team goes 12-0. I think at this point he is trying to go 12-0, go play Indiana in the Big Ten championship and win the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I agree with Ryan Day. Like I don't think he's going to take his foot off the gas and all those things. I guess. I mean, I do still say that, like, just
Oregon
now,
and Penn State did get screwed by playing the game last year.
I have never been a fan of once the playoffs started back in 2014, and I know it's so ironic because that's the only reason Ohio State got into the playoffs and won a national championship was because of the Big Ten championship game. But I always feel like the conference championship games now only help one of the teams. It just doesn't seem, but and also mean it's a shame that Ohio State and Indiana are going to have to play. And technically, if it gets to that point, it won't matter as much. I would love now. And the other side of that is, if you're going to tell me they're going to meet in the playoffs, I'm here for it. I want to kick the teeth of them folks in when it matters, just like we did last year. I guess so. That's kind of what I'm sad about this time is that the game when they finally meet, whoever wins, they can brag or whatever, but it really won't matter because they're both going to go to the playoffs. Now, what they can meet twice.
Yeah, they're both sitting there at 12-0 playing in the Big Ten championship game. Winner and loser is both going to the playoffs. So,
so
you are risking injury trying to win.
And only Indiana cares because that would be monumental for their program as to where Ohio State it's just a stepping stone. It's not even footing that these two teams are on a collision course for. But that's fine. I mean, that's just college football now, and they're not the only team like that. I mean, whether it's Alabama and Vanderbilt, and it's not going to be now, but you know what I'm. It's not like just Ohio State. It's just so one-sided as far as, just like you said, if Ohio State gets to the Big Ten championship game and beats Indiana, then it will just be, well, they just beat Indiana. Nobody cares. They will not get the credit for beating the same team today that they're saying should be the number one team in the country. They will not get any of that. Whoever beats Indiana, I'll put it this way, whoever beats Indiana, unless they win the national championship, if Indiana doesn't lose, that's fine. Whoever beats them will get zero credit for beating Indiana. Like, we will not remember it. We will not care. Like you will if you beat Ohio State or if you beat Alabama. Like, the brand will matter then. That's not fair to Indiana. It's not fair to the team that beats them. Like, that's what I always say. Like, if you're going to stand on it now and say that Indiana is the best team in the country, blah, 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 then whoever beats them, if it happens, should get just the same credit as they get if they would have beat Texas, Georgia, or anybody. But they won't. We know that that's not going to happen. If Ohio State, let's just say this, what everybody thinks is going to happen, which I don't, but I'm saying everybody thinks Ohio State's going to beat Indiana Big Ten championship game. Zero credit. It will not matter. That game will not matter anymore because then it'll just be Ohio State beat Indiana. So that's why I hate for them to have to play that game when it doesn't count. And it may. If one of the teams lose or whatever, that game's going to count. You know what I mean? I don't think we're going to get to that point, but that's what bothers me about this Indiana thing is that they're playing with house money and it drives me freaking nuts. And also let's put out there next week, Penn State, Indiana. We'll find out a lot about if we want to compare teams. Fair comparison. I think what Indiana is going to do is try to score 70 against Penn State. That being said, I'm fine with that because I don't like Penn State. So
yeah, and you won't mind. Now here's where we talked about Ohio State. Talk a little bit about Indiana and how they look at comparison to Ohio State. Now here's where my problem with how Ohio State is being covered, Jeff, comes full circle. Because Ohio State played Penn State yesterday. Ohio State's undefeated. Penn State is 3-4. Ohio State's the number one team in the country. Georgia plays a 3-4 Florida Gators team yesterday. Now, granted, they played neutral site, Jacksonville brought back the lore. And I know this Florida team, to me, is just because this Florida team they're the SEC version of Penn State this year.
Exactly. They're great. I was just getting ready to say that.
Yeah, because you don't look. Penn State has the talent. They only lost their quarterback. They still have both running backs.
They only lost a not great quarterback.
Right, but they got two running backs that are going to go on and play in the NFL. They got a couple defenders on the defensive side of the ball that's going to play in the NFL. This same thing with Florida where you watch them and you're like, I don't know what it is because it's not talent. But Ohio State wins 38-14 against Penn State. And it's still like you haven't played anybody.
Nobody cares.
But people are giving Georgia the resiliency conversation for being able to pull out a win against a 3-4 team that's literally like Florida, Penn State, spitting image.
Yeah.
Coaches struggled this year. Both coaches are gone. It's not the talent on the field. Nobody has really hit the transfer portal yet, so we're not missing anything. It's just a season that went completely opposite of what we expected, but the talent still is there. Georgia almost got upset, and they're going to get all the credit in the world for that win. They're going to be a top 5 team. It's going to be a arguable, like, a solid win on their resume. The fact that they played a neutral site game against Florida, was able to pull it out. Florida's played a lot of teams close. Florida was able to, Florida beat Texas, so they do have a solid win on their resume. So people are going to treat it so much different than beating a 3-4 Penn State when in the grand scheme of things, you just look opposite the conference. Penn State is Florida. So weighing how Ohio State played against Penn State and weighing how Georgia played against Florida and having two different conversations about those teams, to me, is where it gets wild and where the SEC bias and the SEC overhype. And when I say they're overhyped and stuff, I'm not saying that the SEC is good. I'm not saying that they're not the best conference in football this year. I'm just saying we start to value the fact where you're like, some of these teams that are 9 and 10 ain't much separated from our USC, our Michigan, who's in 20 and 21. Respectfully, but like your number 9 and 10 team, you had Vanderbilt in the top 10. They ain't no better than Michigan. They're not any better than USC. Neutral field right now, I don't even know who would be favored in that game, but because Vanderbilt was 9 and in the SEC, it juices up the SEC, and Texas puts Vanderbilt in their place this weekend.
No, I'm totally with you. And it would be like, and believe me, anybody that's listening to your show or my show knows I'm not a Big Ten homer or whatever, but it's obvious.
Oh, I'm not a big, I only argue.
But that's what I'm saying. It's obvious the two conferences right now at the top, but you're exactly right. We would not be sending game day out to, because USC's got one loss. We would not be sending game day to Michigan, even though I'm with you. Michigan and Vanderbilt to me are the same team. And I mean that as a compliment to both teams. But when it's Vanderbilt and they got this 25-year-old quarterback out there running around and flexing muscles, everybody's like, man, we've never seen anything like this. It's, again, you get so much credit for being upstart, as to where Penn State, since they were supposed to be so good, and then they lose 4 in a row, it's like we heard it all week. Oh, they're terrible. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. Like, but you're exactly right. If Ohio State and Penn State would have been close the whole game, Ohio State would have got more credit because they'd have been like, Penn State took them to the wire and they won. But and that's an Ohio State thing, but it is definitely an issue with, I watched the Vanderbilt game and I'm like, Vanderbilt's just another good team. They're just another good team. That's it. There's nothing more to it. Texas isn't great because they beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's not terrible because they lost, but they're also not like, just because they tell you they're national title contenders doesn't mean they were.
Right.
And now they're in a hole, probably on the outside looking in, depending on what Texas does at Texas A&M in the end of the year and all these things. But you're exactly right. When I see Georgia, now I will say this for Georgia, they could have literally not kneeled on the ball and won the game by 11 points.
It
I
looks
will
a
say,
little more
but that doesn't mean they
before.
couldn't have lost either. So like, I think a 4-point victory is accurate, and you're exactly right. But since it's Florida, you'll peruse through it, and this is, and again, luckily it doesn't matter anymore. But the voters peruse through and go, Georgia beat Florida, good victory.
Right.
You're exactly right about it, and it is weird. And then what we'll do with the next Big 12 team or SEC team that has won more games than we thought. Missouri is a great case. Missouri is just another team in the Big Ten, like Illinois, Missouri, Illinois, great comparison. But we don't sit here with Illinois and go, upstart, could knock everybody off of the top. We know where they're positioned. So yeah, it's definitely, hopefully that stuff will work itself out, when it gets towards the end and people will realize it, but it is frustrating.
And that's why I say
I totally with you. It's frustrating when you're an Ohio State fan to be like, yes, I know
and this is the conversation that we have. Like I said, this is the frustrating part about being an Ohio State fan. You have this conversation, and this becomes the debate or the topic of conversation that you end up having to defend year in and year out. And it's okay, because at the end of the day, like, they are going to play somebody, whether it's Indiana in the Big Ten championship,
there you go. It's going to work
SEC
out.
team or one of these top tier teams in the college football playoff. Like, they will play somebody, and the people on either side will be proven right or wrong. But you know who they won't be playing, Jeff? Tennessee. Because Tennessee,
I was just getting ready to say,
our first good team, our first true good team that I think's playoff hopes has been eliminated. Now, I think, to me, this Oklahoma-Tennessee game was an official playoff eliminator out of the SEC. The two lost teams playing each other. I think that third loss now makes you a non-playoff team. I'm not saying that 3-loss SEC team couldn't get in, but I just, with the way things look now, Tennessee might be the only 3-loss team that'll be sitting there with a case to get into the playoffs. It might be a bunch of 2-loss SEC teams, a couple 2-loss Big Ten teams. You might not have 1 or 2 more 3-loss teams where you can make that a topic of conversation. So to me, in my opinion, Oklahoma winning on Saturday night essentially eliminated Tennessee from the college football playoff, because I just, and I even talked to Walker, who was a huge SEC homer, and I had said, like, I think a 3-loss SEC team could get in, and he's like, I don't see it. I don't see a world, because there's a lot of, Texas A&M is undefeated. There's multiple 1-loss SEC teams, and they only have, some of those 1-loss teams only have like 1 possible loss left on their schedule when you're looking at just predicting their schedule out. Yeah. So you might paint where there'll be 3 or 4 10-2 teams, but that Tennessee at that third loss will not have the resume. They don't have the wins to where they haven't won 5 or 6 of their wins where they're so tough that you can't even argue their resume, and they just happen to play one of the tougher schedules. Oklahoma winning that game, to me, was, that was the eliminator for Tennessee. That was a playoff game on that Saturday night, and I don't even know if everybody really realized it, because the numbers next to them was 18-14, but these were 2-loss SEC teams playing with their back against the wall to continue to fight for an opportunity to reach the college football playoff.
No, I think you nailed it. I think Oklahoma has put themselves, especially if we want to talk about the ACC, kind of fell apart. Like, all this has been based on, can the ACC get 2, maybe 3 teams in, and then Georgia Tech and Miami lose over the weekend. You're like, I'm telling you right now, like, whoever doesn't get to the ACC championship is not getting in over Oklahoma or Texas.
It's probably only the ACC champion winner. We probably only going to have one.
Yes. And so the SEC has put themselves, and this is where I give them full credit. Like, I think Texas, if they handle business and beat Texas A&M, Texas is going to get in. Or I think if nothing changes and A&M beats Texas, then Oklahoma's in. I think Oklahoma's put themselves, because that victory, I promise, by the time that we're talking about the playoff, bracket, that victory over Michigan is going to look really good. Back in September. So I think Oklahoma's put themselves into next step. I'm penciling A&M in. I'm penciling Alabama in. I'm penciling Ole Miss in at this point, because whoever doesn't go to the SEC championship game is guaranteed in. Whoever does go is guaranteed in, and Georgia's probably going to get in now. They're going to have Georgia Tech left on the schedule. I would assume they'll beat them, whether it matters or not. And then I think Texas or Oklahoma's in. So I think there's going to be 5 SEC teams get in, and I'm not even going to argue with it. But Tennessee can't even jump Vanderbilt, assuming Vanderbilt doesn't fall apart, and they might.
Right.
Vanderbilt could fall apart, and I'm going to give them all the chance to, because I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of them being shoved down my throat. They're just an okay team. I think Penn State and Vanderbilt, if they played, on a neutral field tomorrow, would be a game. So, Tennessee, that's a great point. They've quietly, even though they're where they were ranked, they're done, because now there's just not a path. We talk about this a lot. What's your path? They just don't have a path to get there outside of chaos, complete and utter chaos, and everything falls apart around them. Same with the Miami Hurricanes. They need a little chaos.
Let's talk about them. Go ahead and talk about the Miami Hurricanes, because, Jeff, they lost in overtime to SMU. This is SMU's biggest. This is their biggest win in program history since what I think they said, the 1970s. This is the first time they beat a top 10 team.
This is their biggest win since they weren't allowed to pay players and paid players back in the 80s, at least.
That's what I'm saying. I think they haven't beat a top 10 team since 1970 something, right, or early 1980s, which we know, the whole story with SMU. And like I said, now I do want to give credit to SMU. Jeff, this goes back to before last year, summer
last year, you called
of last season. I said a team like SMU, they went and got them a good head coach, and now they can pay players. When were they prominent? When you weren't allowed to pay players and they were paying players. SMU has money. The city of Dallas, people from Dallas, Texas, they have money. They'll put it into their program. They're doing it in their women's basketball. They're doing it in their men's basketball, and they're doing it in football. Last year, SMU makes the playoff. SMU gets to the ACC championship. This year, SMU, I know they kind of took a drop back as far as maybe what you thought. You thought maybe they could be a team to get back to the ACC championship, and I think their chances are still alive. But just being able to get that kind of win, get it on the road, or get it at home, storm the field, everything. This is year 2 of SMU being fully back, out of the death penalty and alive as a program. And so for them to get this kind of win while also having reached the ACC championship last year, maybe you short of expectations, but you still could compete with the top teams in your conference because you beat, essentially the number 1 or number 2 team in your conference in Miami, and you handle business at home in overtime. That's a huge win for SMU. On the other side, I think I've been nailing it on the head of comparisons. So to me, this Miami Hurricanes team, after they lost, I get on the internet, I find myself when certain teams when these top teams, not even just Miami, it's not just, but when these teams get upset, I try and put myself and read their side of Twitter or get in their message boards and just see what the conversation is. In Miami, you know who they are, Jeff? For the past 2 years. I'm not saying this is who they are as a program for historically, but they're the Dallas Cowboys. And here's why. Because they come into the season with possibly unrealistic expectations. Cam Ward is supposed to be a dude, and then you handle business, but then eventually there's going to be a team that shouldn't get you that gets you, and you're like, this is the realization. Maybe it's not our year this year. Maybe next year. This year, Miami, Carson Beck comes out on fire. They beat Notre Dame. Carson Beck looks like a Heisman front runner, looked like he could win the Heisman. He looked almost flawless for the first month of the season. Then over the past 6 weeks, you now see what Georgia was talking about when they talking about Carson Beck. It's inconsistent. He can make some great throws. He makes some terrible decisions. And it leads to the fact that Miami now has 2 losses. A month into the season after beating Notre Dame, there was conversation of Miami should be the number 1 team. Miami is better than Ohio State. Are we sure that this defense is something that Ohio State wouldn't want to see? And obviously being an Ohio State fan, and after they beat Texas, they've been the number 1 team in the country. So that's what everybody set the standard for. When they were number 2, people were comparing them to the team ahead of them. Are they better than them? And they've come back to reality because you lose to Louisville, you lose to SMU. You're not a national title contender. You maybe can win your conference because your conference is one of the cupcake conferences. But in the grand scheme of things, you're not even a fear in these nationally relevant programs. Like, you're no different than if Nebraska sneaks in and made it to the playoffs. Like, Miami's no different than Nebraska. Miami's no different than Michigan. And I think Michigan's more prominent than Miami anyway, but just based on expectations, like Miami comes in and has the same expectations that Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State do because of who they think they've become in their conference. They think going 12-0 should be easy with this type of talent in the ACC, and they just can't get it done. They just don't meet expectations. And so next year, Miami's going to do the same thing. They're going to have a very talented team. They're going to get a quarterback out of the transfer portal, and he's going to be a pretty good quarterback. Like, he's going to fare out pretty well, but it's just not going to be good enough because just like Stephen A. Smith says about the Cowboys, what can go wrong will go wrong, and that's something that kind of has been the thing with Miami.
And Miami's their roster, like they're good. I think they're going to get in, and basically, I'm basing that on the fact that Georgia Tech lost also this weekend.
So you're just assuming that Miami wins their conference because that's the only way they get in.
I mean, but I think they get. I think if they go, here's what's going to happen.
Got 2 losses now. They can't go 9-3.
What's going to happen is if they lose in the conference champion, they're better off to not make that conference championship game, honestly. And they could go and win it. I mean, Miami, I think so. Miami Miami needs help, but from what I saw from the ACC this weekend, I think they're going to get help. Just be like, obviously, none of these teams care about
really that good. None of these teams are that
exactly.
Good.
So I think they can still get in. I don't have them as a contender anymore. I definitely kind of drank some of the Kool-Aid earlier in the year. But you touched on everything, the flaws of Miami since then. What they lack, and most of these teams lack, that Ohio State really, Ohio State's kind of went to the top. It's the depth. It's the depth across every position. It's just layers and layers of talent, and that's what catches up with you in the middle of the season. And Miami has suffered a little bit, from depth, but. To go back to an earlier point you made, what I do think sucks about this is, like, I agree with everything I think about the ACC, but it's still not fair because what Miami did was lose to a playoff team from last year. And again, if Miami loses for Georgia or Vanderbilt loses to Texas or whatever, they're like, that's fine. Miami loses to a playoff team from last year, and it's like ACC is terrible. None of these teams are great. And I kind of agree with it, but it's still not fair of how Miami is being judged because they're in the ACC. Georgia Tech losing really, really, really hurt any chance of the ACC of getting definitely more than 2 teams in. And I'm not even against that. But I think the comparison I would make is the arguments that we're going to have at the end, going into the playoffs is what you said. Vanderbilt, Michigan, Miami, like this group of teams, how are we going to weigh in and how are we going to decide who gets that one of the last few spots from those conferences? And it's going to be interesting to see how it goes, and how they value wins and losses. And I think Miami is on the outside looking in as far as an at-large team, just because we don't think the ACC is very good.
But listen to this though, Jeff, and this is where every week since we've been on this college football season, we've always referred back to this, how sweet the NIL era has been to us and how much it's impacted college football. We say all that about Miami. Miami loses Saturday night, Jeff. They drop to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 teams ahead of them in their conference now. They are now number 7 in their conference with 2 conference losses, sitting with a 2-2 conference record. And what we're not talking about, Georgia Tech losses, so it's a bad day for the ACC. Virginia just keeps winning. They're undefeated in conference play. They're sitting here as a top 10 team. They're 8-1, and when you look at what they have left on their schedule, they got Duke, they got Virginia Tech, and they got Wake Forest. So Virginia looks like a team where we're talking about all these ACC representatives, we're talking about Georgia Tech, or we're talking about Miami, and we're not sitting here talking about Virginia, who's probably going to find their way. If they win, they're going to be in the ACC championship because they're going to be undefeated. Yep. They're going to be 11-1, but they're going to be undefeated in conference play. They're sitting there in that top spot. There's a world where we could get Virginia, versus Georgia Tech. And like
And
you
that's
said,
what I'm saying. That's what I'm
benefits Miami sitting on the outside at 10 and 2,
That's what I'm
not
saying
playing
about
in that game.
Georgia Tech screwed this up because if Georgia Tech doesn't lose, it's over for Miami. So now there's a window to where Miami could possibly get in the ACC championship game, and then I think they would win, honestly. But now
does it matter if Virginia was to win? Like if Virginia was to win, here's my. Let's paint it like this.
Okay, let's do
Miami's 10 and 2 on the outside. They're not playing in their conference championship game.
Okay.
Virginia plays Georgia Tech. So you got 10 and 2 Miami. Georgia Tech's a one-loss team. So you got 11 and 1 Virginia versus 11 and 1 Georgia Tech. I think if Virginia wins that game, I think Miami's out. Because how do you let 10 and 2 Miami in, but you would pull 11 and 2 Virginia because they lost in the ACC championship? Wow. Where if Georgia Tech wins, Virginia Tech has that second loss, but you'll be sitting there comparing them to, like, if Virginia wins, you're arguing Georgia Tech or Miami. Where if Georgia Tech beats Virginia, you're arguing Virginia and Miami. I think Miami can clear the Virginia conversation just based off a name. I think Georgia Tech has made themselves enough of a name this year that you could justify putting them in over Miami because they made their conference championship and lost at 11 and 2. Then you would make it for the Virginia Cavaliers, because the Virginia Cavaliers being in the college football playoff just sounds like one of the most insane things that could possibly happen in the 2025-2026 college football season. And Jeff, it's real because of all this. Virginia could be a playoff team and nobody's talking about it.
I think what's going to happen is Miami. I don't think the conversation is going to be about Miami and the ACC. I think it's going to be between Miami and, let's say at the time, it's going to be one of the Big 12 teams, Texas Tech, Cincinnati. It's going to be one of the SEC teams.
Cincinnati last night too.
Right. But I'm saying that's going to be the argument. Like Miami is going to be, it's going to be like Tennessee was last year. Remember Tennessee last year? Like we all knew 3 weeks before the playoffs that they were in, because they were in such a comfy spot of we knew they weren't going to go to the SEC championship game, but we also knew they weren't going to lose, and they were going to get put in that hole. That's where Miami, but it's going to be between like Miami. But here's what's crazy, that Miami again has put themselves in a position, and I keep saying Georgia Tech has, because Georgia Tech could have ended all this by winning. And Georgia Tech and Virginia would be definitely in with only one loss or whatever. But it's going to be, when it goes down to who's going to be that last team in, the names we're talking about are going to be, the beloved Vanderbilt and Diego, Pavia. It's going to be Texas. It's going to be Michigan, who just won a national championship. The names that they're going to be arguing about putting in, you're not going to be able to just get in based on like, well, you're Miami and Carson Beck, we're going to give you the nod because we want to see you in the playoffs. You're going to be choosing between mega programs. And I think that's where Miami's hurt themselves. It's not an argument. Last year, Tennessee, the argument was it was going to be Tennessee. Everybody else you start arguing about were either group of 5 teams
or had
Big 12
losses.
Yes, or Big 12 teams or more losses. If it comes down to arguing, it's going to be, we're arguing Oklahoma, Miami, Texas, Michigan, all these programs. So then, therefore, like Miami is not necessarily just going to get the automatic bid that they were given 2 weeks ago, and then they're going to look at the losses and say like, so Miami's really put themselves. But I think Miami is in good shape as far as what they really want. Miami is they probably want to win out, and they probably also want Georgia Tech and Virginia to go to that game, and one of those teams look bad, and Miami not have to play it, and then hope that the committee is just like, well, we need another team. We're only going to talk about, there's only going to be about 2 spots up for discussion. Like we're going to know the rest of the spots going into week, before the conference championship games. There's only going to be a couple spots up, and Miami is going to hope to just get in that conversation and hope that somebody is on their side and remembers that Notre Dame victory is going to carry them into the playoffs. If anything is, it's definitely going to be that.
Right. 100%. Like I said,
Notre Dame did take a step back yesterday. It's fine. It does not matter. Notre Dame just has to win out and they're in. But they definitely took a step
25
back.
to 10 was not the most impressive.
And it wasn't a good 25-10 victory. But it doesn't really matter. But it does definitely it eats away at that. benefit of the
Gap
doubt.
that you've created, especially by living off the fact that you're Notre Dame.
Yes.
And there's not a world where the College Football Playoff Committee wouldn't love for Notre Dame to finish 10-2 and justify putting them in the College Football Playoff. And it might be rightfully so. Like, I'm not saying that they're not a playoff team. I'm not saying that they're not one of the 12 best teams in the country.
So how interesting is it that it's going to be like you're going to have to argue Notre Dame, Miami, and you're going to have to justify putting Notre Dame in over Miami that beat them.
Miami's beat Notre Dame. Yeah,
it's going to happen.
And that's where this is where there'll never be enough playoff spots, because if you get 16, you'll be arguing 20. If you get 24, you'll be arguing 30. So 12 and then being there 16 being good enough, like it'll just be for the sake of argument. Like with there being 12 teams, we're arguing the back two. We're going to argue 15 teams for 12 spots.
Here's what we're going to find out this year. And I know we're going to talk about this so much when the playoffs get here. We've got a month before the playoffs start. That's what's awesome about, we'll call it the Jeff and Mo era of college football. We're already discussing playoff stuff a month ahead of time. It's awesome. But here's what's going to happen this year. The flaw is if a group of 5 team doesn't do anything in the playoffs again this year, that's the conversation you got to have, because the team that gets left out is going to look at South Florida or Memphis or whatever and be like, we could have done that. You know what I'm saying? So like you're going to leave, let's say Vanderbilt is left out. Everybody loves Vanderbilt. Everybody wants to see them get a shot. If they don't get in, they're going to watch Memphis or Navy or.
But you know what it does though. Here's my thing. Keeping that G5 spot in there, even if when they get to, as of right now where it stands, even if they get to the playoff and they end up getting blown out, keeping that G5 spot keeps the G5 football games mattering. Like, I don't think people realize like North Texas versus Navy this past weekend was huge. So I know like they'll be looking like maybe G5 shouldn't be guaranteed that one spot in, because it should always be an argument. But you have right now, you got USF, North Texas, Navy, Memphis, Texas, San Antonio. Like you got 6 or 7 G5 teams playing outstanding football, which is because the G5 has a playoff spot. If not, if you eliminate the G5,
we wouldn't catch. That's a great point.
You eliminate Memphis. You eliminate the possibilities of those type of schools even being building blocks for potential head coaches at these major programs. So I would have to completely get rid of when USF.
I don't want to. I'm saying that
game was huge.
I think the dangers, and as long as they represent themselves in the playoffs, it's going to be fine. Like but I'm just saying the risk that's out there. The alternative is for TV, because that's who runs college football is TV. If they don't see a good showing from a G5 school, they're going to be like, we could have had, let's say just for instance, we could have had Notre Dame, Miami, on New Year's Eve as a playoff game rather than Notre Dame, Memphis. And those are the people that pay the money. Those are the people that make the decisions. That's what I worry about. I'm saying that's going to be the conversation. If one of the schools plays well and everything looks good, everything you say is true. Like once we've said this for years, like we love this new playoff system, but it just made the big schools better.
And it made some of the middle of the pack Power 5 schools or Power 4 schools now, it made them turn it up a notch. Now Missouri is a real playoff contender. Now Vanderbilt is a real playoff contender. Now Indiana is a real playoff national title contender up to this point in the season. Now Texas A&M is able to turn it around and finally meet expectations based on recruiting classes they've been bringing in based on NIL dollars. If you get because here's my thing. You're 100% correct as far as what people say about the G5, but here's my thing. Nobody will ever be saitified with the G5 getting in until one of those schools come in and win the national championship.
I think just playing well would be fine. I think if Memphis
win multiple, like I think you got to win.
If North Texas plays the same game that Penn State just played against Ohio State, people would consider that. I think that would lock in the G5 for all time. And I'm not saying they can't.
I think a final 38-14 would justify why those teams shouldn't be in. Because people box like they won't when you end the game at 38-14, they don't care that it was 17-14 at halftime anymore. They don't care that North Texas went into the locker room and had Ohio State on the brink. What they're going to say is See, this proves the point. North Texas could only hang with Ohio State for 30 minutes. Once Ohio State got their heads out their tails and turned back around, they put up points. In North Texas only had 60 yards. If it goes that way in a playoff game, yeah, you'd be like, they had them on the brink for 30 minutes, but it could just be because Ohio State came out slow. As soon as they flip the switch, people are going to be like, see, these type of teams get blown out. And so this is why we don't want them in there. But to me, one G5 representer has made 7 elite G5 college football schools this year. Now, and it's a year in, year out basis. The coaches,
it's going to be great.
Job, but they created where a Memphis. I went to USF versus North Texas because of how it was the battle of two undefeateds. USF was ranked. It was a battle of potential. Who's going to represent the playoff for the G5? Never did I think I would go to a USF North Texas game and be as intrigued as I was, but I went. And that's because a G5 representer can make it in the playoffs. If the G5 ever loses their representation, a USF versus North Texas on Friday night doesn't matter. A undefeated Navy versus a one-loss North Texas, who arguably has the best quarterback in the in the non-power 4 schools in the country, putting up video game numbers. None of that ever matters because there's no chance of them competing for anything that matters. And you just get to watch them in the Mayo Bowl or the Cheese Bowl or the Pop-Tart Bowl. And I mean, sure, they're entertainment on Christmas break, but other than that, you don't want those type of schools to turn into that.
Well, what they need to do then is they need to have Coach Mo Murphy run the press conferences for the G5 schools, because that is interesting. And for the next 4 weeks, the push of who's going to be the G5 school should actually be promoted and put out there, because we know the other stuff's going to work itself out. The big boys are going to work itself out. I would love to see everybody understand that, because what you brought up about coaches and players and all that being irrelevant if it goes away, which that's my fear, is that it'll go away as soon as Miami or Notre Dame or whoever doesn't make the playoffs this year. They're going to be like, I'm just saying, like ESPN, ABC is going to say, okay, we're going to look at the ratings. We're going to see how they come in. We would rather have, Michigan, Texas, one of these schools in over Memphis. And that's what I fear is going to happen, because
shouldn't ESPN be paying attention to the fact
they
because
should.
Other advantage.
But it goes by how many eyeballs watch.
You're right, but think about it. They're on that. They will host a game like it'll be Memphis versus Tulane on ESPN2 at 3:30. I'm on Central Time, and that game is actually, it's not going to get the numbers that Ohio State and Texas and all, but it's a gap in between the primetime game that ABC is going to throw on, that people are actually watching, especially in week 10, week 11, week 12.
Well, then those
games matter. You're not promoting your own you're promoting the SEC.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Your own product.
Memphis, USF, Navy, North Tech. Those teams are coming on your network on ESPN. Like, think about it, Jeff. You watched, I went to the game a few weeks ago, but you watched the USF North Texas game on a Friday night. Why would Jeff Hunt ever watch USF versus North Texas on a Friday night to see what it looks like if there's no G5 representative? That's why Jeff Hunt even remotely cared about that game. USF had beat Florida. They were a great story up to the point. Miami kind of humbled them, but they never let it ruin their season. They bounced back. And so now a guy like Mo Murphy goes to the game. A guy like Jeff Hunt cares about the game and watches the game and is interested in the fact that a team like North Texas is hosting a game like this against USF, because the G5 can be represented in the playoffs. Because all the care about college football ties back to the relevancy of how relevant are you in the playoff conversation. The farther you are away from the playoffs, the farther you are removed from relevancy. Yeah, Memphis can be 23 and Navy could be unranked and undefeated, and North Texas could be one loss and undefeated, and USF is ranked 18 and they're a one-loss team. Yeah, all those schools can be in the 20s and be unranked, but in the grand scheme of things, like when a ranked USF plays an unranked North Texas and they're both undefeated, the game matters for the aesthetic. Alex Golesh might get a job for the job that he's done in making USF a possible G5 representative. You don't have those schools no longer become even stopgap positions where head coaches can go to USF, prove I could turn a program around, and then come do it at a Alabama or Auburn or whatever in the SEC, Big Ten,
Right.
whatever job becomes available. That's kind of what even these G5 jobs are. A lot of head coaches in the Power 5 are former G5 guys, and some fail, some sink, some swim. That's just the nature of the business. I mean, it's not a determiner that because you coached at USF and had a lot of success, I don't think it'll necessarily be that you go and coach at Auburn and you don't have the same success, that it was because you were at USF prior and that's the only reason you had success. But that's your building block. That's your, if I could take a G5 school and make them a playoff team, I just made myself as a head coach $5 million extra a year.
But again, it's only going to matter if the G5 looks viable. That they have to look, and they might. I don't know what's going to happen. Memphis might. I think Memphis might upset Alabama, and we're like, or North Texas or whoever. Like, but they have to look the part, because if they get there and they look like they're on another level down, then all these other teams from the SEC and the Big Ten and ACC, like let's say Miami doesn't get in, and North Texas gets in, and North Texas looks, I'm not even talking about getting blown out or anything, just doesn't look the part. And, right. then if I'm Miami, I'm like, well, what did what did we do wrong? Like, we beat Notre Dame, we lost a couple games, whatever, but we obviously are better than, that's what I don't want to happen, but I'm afraid.
They are obviously better from a skill perspective, but then what are you telling? Like, because my thing would be telling.
Oh no, I understand. We've talked about this playoff system. Could kill. If you
let Carson Beck in Miami get in there, and Drew Mestamaker is sitting there at North Texas putting up video game numbers all year. Yeah. This kid is he's gonna be at a Power 4 school next year. Yeah. I don't think North Texas is gonna be able to retain him just off the NIL dollars, being able to pay a guy. But what if now he's sitting here like, bro, I didn't get my opportunity, but they let Miami get in. Miami goes and gets blown out. Like, this is a team that's lost.
There's the other side of it. That's a great
point. And lost to Louisville. They've already shown you they're vulnerable. Yes, North Texas is a G5 school. They did get worked by USF. They also have a story of they arguably still have the best quarterback in the country. Like, realistically, he's probably the best quarterback in the country, but we're not going to talk about him and give him the credit because he doesn't see the same defenses that Ty Simpsons and Julian Sand and them do. But they're also, a guy like him is playing with less talent than a Julian Sand or a Ty Simpson or a Cade Klubnik or whatever it may be.
I don't want to get into where we're letting teams in the playoffs based on that. Like, if, for instance,
just one, it's only one.
No, I know. No, I don't want it to stop. I'm saying there's a chance.
The best of those six. One of those six schools that's been relevant in that
set up all year. I'm worried that, but I also don't want to get into a world to where we're like, if Jeremiah Smith transfers to Memphis and has 2,000 yards receiving, that we're like, oh, they should get in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, there does that. You do have to give credit to these programs that have depth and have layers and, have NFL talent, because that is what college football is based on. And again, all this will be fine. As long as the G5 school looks the part, it won't change right away. But I'm saying, if they don't look the part, the first, let's put it this way. When I say look the part, if the TV ratings aren't there, that's when somebody's going to be like, we might need to change this, and then they'll word it in some way to be like, no, we have to, it has to be, they'll come up with some way that if you're not a great, because this is all based on Boise State being undefeated. All this G5 stuff is based on Boise State being undefeated. Nobody cares about the G5. They cared because Boise State beat Oklahoma 20 years ago, is why all this, and Cincinnati had a good run when they weren't in the Big 12 and all these things. So what we need is we need North Texas to go, and we need them to play good, and then it's solved. And then Miami can be like, we weren't that, or maybe North Texas plays Miami in the playoffs or something like that. I'm just saying that when we start the playoffs this year and we watch it, that is going to be something that the people with the dollar signs watch. Now, we're going to love it. Me and Mo, we're watching, Mo.
Yeah, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to root for North Texas or Navy or USF or whoever.
So just Pillsbury,
as long as they're not playing Ohio State, you know what I'm saying? Like, as long as they're not playing, I'll take them.
Yeah, Pillsbury, Toyota, Anheuser-Busch. That's who cares about the numbers. And if they bring in TV numbers, nobody will care. Nobody will care if they bring in TV numbers. But typically, college football, outside of us insane fans, like what brings in numbers is brands, and people just know brands. And so
Yeah.
that's my fear for this coming playoffs. I think we're at a point. And again, it might all be taken care of. If North Texas is good and everybody's talking about them the next day, just like they do, in college basketball, and everybody was talking about George Mason for a week, then that's going to be fine. That's totally fine, and everything's going to work, and it's going to be perfect. But let's say it's a ho-hum game, and the numbers are way down compared to whoever's on Oklahoma, Oklahoma Vanderbilt on the other side. If North Texas and whoever makes it, if the numbers are down, that's when people are going to start being like, what are we doing here?
Nobody even wanted to watch this in the first place. They should have put Miami. It'll make it a better look if Bama at the 5 spot beats number 12 Miami 42.
Yes.
More people will watch that
100%.
blowout than if Bama beat North Texas 42.
We hated the Bama Cincinnati game a few years ago. We hated it. Everybody hated it.
And we did, but it was also at the same time, it was when it was 4 teams, and you're like, bro, there's 5 or 6 teams better than Cincinnati
100%.
right now. I don't know. You'll see there's 5 or 6 teams better than a North Texas or USF because of the type
I just worry that
talent on the roster, but you won't.
As long as the numbers are, I just worry that Dr. Pepper is the one driving the bus here. And you just nailed it. It's how it looks to the eyeball. It's how the viewers
promote your product though. That's my thing. Is everything that you say.
So I do think they're missing an opportunity.
G5 schools be on Friday nights on ESPN. Yes. They be mid Saturday afternoon games on ESPN. So they're on your network. You as ESPN that controls the college football playoff, that controls ratings. You can promote your product during the week, but you solely focus on your mainstream conference.
Because
is going to sell itself though.
Bread is buttered by the SEC.
Of course, but you don't have to hype up anybody to watch number 18 Oklahoma versus number 14 Tennessee on a Saturday night. That game is what it is because of Oklahoma and Tennessee. Not saying that you shouldn't hype up that game, you should, but not necessarily the same ad dollars, but the type of money that you'll put in to promote that game that's already going to sell itself, and you're going to eat alive off of them playing prime time on a Saturday night. You could take some of that and promote the fact that North Texas was playing Navy. Hey, if I'm ESPN, what I want, knowing that we have a G5 representative in the playoff, I want everybody watching these possible G5 schools, 1, to bring in some more money in a different part of college football, and 2, so that when they do get their seat at the table, even if they were to get blown out, people have watched 3, 4, 5 Memphis games this year and honed in on it because we made it a big deal, or people have watched USF play football 3, 4, 5 times, or you've seen North Texas had an opportunity to watch them, or you watch Navy. If you're promoting those type of games, if you made it a big deal that 7-1 North Texas versus undefeated Navy playing for essentially an elimination game of the G5 spot is essentially what that game could possibly have been. Or when undefeated USF played undefeated North Texas. Yeah, USF is ranked and North Texas isn't, but that game, even though North Texas has bounced back and looked really good, looked before they did against USF, but that game could have been a playoff eliminator early on in the season. We weren't talking about playoff eliminators in the Power 5 or in the Power 4 schools because we got the whole season to go. But one loss is what can do to them G5 schools what one loss used to do to the big schools in the BCS era. Yep. So you could have treated a week 5 Friday night USF versus North Texas as essentially a possible playoff eliminator. You could have sold it that way, and it would have been even made a bigger deal than it already was. And that game, to me, was kind of made a big deal. Surprise. Even North Texas was surprised that they were playing in a game so prominent.
Yeah, no, and everything you say is true, but it all just comes down to name recognition and eyeballs.
And brand.
Yeah, you're right.
How many shirts can I sell? How many hats are you going to buy?
You're 100%.
How much money can I make just putting a playoff logo on the same T-shirt that everybody else has as fans? I get that, and it's big business, and I do understand that. That's why I say I'm not.
Oh, I know you do. I'm just saying,
I'm just playing devil's advocate on your.
No, you're right about everything, and I want it to stay that way. I'm just saying they're watching this year. I really think they're watching, because I will also say that we said all of this stuff 20 years ago about then. It was the New Year's Bowl games, the big games, and we said all of these same things. And what happened was UConn went to, I believe, a Fiesta Bowl. Nobody cared. Boise State, they beat Oklahoma, and that, I think that was a Fiesta Bowl, and that was a big deal. But other than that, we really don't care. We did not care when UCF was undefeated. Things like people clamored for it and said, like, give them a chance. And like, but I the one that I remember is when UConn, got into a BCS game. It was terrible. Nobody watched. Nobody cared. UConn couldn't sell the tickets. And I don't say that's going to happen in the playoff, but like, we don't know that that's going to translate outside of crazy football fans like us.
Right.
I do not think it's going to keep translating. They want eyeballs, and that's all the sport is a television sport. And I worry that I think the G5 is on watch this year. So I hope they play good. I hope it's a great season rundown. I do hope they advertise a little bit, but ESPN's never going to promote it because they would rather have a fifth SEC team in than any of the G5 teams because that's where their bread's buttered. I would just say that like this is an important playoff for the G5.
Yeah, 100%. So Jeff, I think I've held you hostage long enough. Recapping week 10, the fact that Jeff, we're in week 10. I think we have basically 4 more weeks of regular season.
4 weeks to go, though. It's awesome.
Yeah, we have 4 more weeks left to go of the regular season of college football. A lot of things are going to happen, and everything is going to. The greatest thing about sports is that we can have all these conversations, and at the end of the day, we can stop, and everything is going to fall into place. Yes. There's that Sunday selection Sunday is going to happen. We're going to know the 12 teams that get in the playoffs. We're going to know the matchups. We're going to know the road that all 12 teams have that they're going to have to take in order to reach the national championship. So despite all this conversation, everything will play itself out. We just discussing it from our point of view. I'm Coach Mo. That's Jeff Hunt. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. Friends, family, and fans. The 3 F's is the most important thing that make this show run. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. And we will catch you next week on another show. We will also catch you midweek, talking a little bit of basketball in the middle of the week. My season is about to start. Our first regular season game is Friday night. We've had a scrimmage on Saturday. First regular season game on Friday night. We open up with back-to-back Friday night and Saturday afternoon games to start out the regular season of our basketball season. So everything is in full force, Jeff. Basketball's kicked off. Me coaching basketball is kicked off. The NBA is on. College football is in the prime of its season. The NFL is really ramping up. We're getting a lot of great games, MVP conversations. Everything is all perfect in the world at this point on November 2nd. So I do appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. We will catch you on the next episode of the Coach Mo Murphy Show.